right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you have never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Lindsay. Lindsay, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you, as a matter of fact. What we are going to be talking about today is addiction recovery. And that's kind of what Lindsay is all about. She's all about supporting that community. So we're going to get into that. Just a little note here. You can find the Billy D's podcast pretty much anywhere you find a podcast. I'm glad you found us today. And not all of our episodes are available on video, but we are experimenting recently. The old Twitter, which is now called X. If you're on that platform, we are now posting a long form video, which is now available to, if you have a verified account, I believe is the criteria for that. So we are doing that. We are following what a lot of media figures are doing. So feel free to check us out on the old Twitter, which is now X. All right, Lindsay, let's talk a little bit about you. Where are you at? You're in Florida, right?
Yeah, Clearwater, Florida.
Yeah. How are things down in Florida? I'm told the water is really warm. As a matter of fact, it's causing a problem. It's because the coral and all that is having a problem. Is that right?
I don't know about that, but I just know it's really hot and I don't like it. It's so hot outside. I hate it.
Yeah. I like warm weather, but there it's sticky. It's kind of like that Georgia heat where you go out west, it's a little, it's a little different.
Exactly.
Speaking of Twitter, which is now X, you can find Lindsay. Her screen name is @L with an underscore and then Villandry, and it's VILLANDRY. She also has a YouTube channel, and I really like the name of her YouTube channel. It's Recover Loudly. That's awesome. And that's great. One of the first things that I talk about when people are sharing their journey that you have had is I always like to ask them a little bit about their early days, because a lot of times there can be clues, or at least it's very interesting to me how that path began. So what were you, a normal family, brothers, sisters? What were you, athletic, a school type? What were you like as a child?
Well, I was a very shy kid. I was a really good student. I was like teacher's pet. I remember like from kindergarten, just like I never got in trouble ever.
Really?
Ever. I am an only child, mom and dad, and very close family with mom and dad. Not a lot of extended family, but we literally went to Disney World every Sunday when I was growing up.
Really?
Like I had I guess it'd be like picture perfect, right? I always thought like I have no room to complain about anything, especially as I gotten older and looking back on it, because, we had money, I was taken care of. I got everything that I needed and wanted. No abuse, no trauma, nothing. So, yeah. Yeah,
well, we have something in common because I'm an only child as well. And I don't run into many of them, but we're out there. And my wife puts up with me, but I've been told in the past that I have only child syndrome. Now, do you know what that is? Okay,
I have it.
Okay. I have a pen here. I have a pen and I'm going to put it on my desk. And tomorrow when I come back, it's going to be exactly where I left it. And
that's right.
And you experienced that as well?
Absolutely. My parents, actually, my dad would say, if you had a brother or sister, you would eat them because you just like, I couldn't share the attention. And I'd be like, but it's true.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm gonna say, I guess you took the normal path through high school and everything. When did your troubles begin? How did that start? Because it's very seldom. I only ever talked to one person that it was instant. I talked to a gentleman a while back who was a straight A student all through school, all through high school, and he went to a graduation party. and he had his first drink at that party and ended up getting thrown out, and he suffered for 30 years afterwards. It was that one, it was that powerful, but usually it creeps up on you. So I would be kind of curious as to how your troubles kind of evolved.
Yeah. Kind of similar actually to what you just said. I was kind of sheltered, but I didn't realize it. I was a competitive gymnast growing up. And so I was on a gymnastics team and I trained like every day, hours, almost every day. I think like 4 days a week, like 2 hours after school. It's just me and my mom all the time. I didn't like go hang out with friends or anything, but it was ninth grade, freshman year in high school. I remember like it was yesterday. It's so weird. Like just telling it right now, I can picture myself sitting behind someone in class, and this girl over here, and all the guys looking at this girl. There's this girl, pretty, outspoken, tan, big boobs, skinny girl, getting all this attention. And I was like quiet, shy, fearful. I was made fun of a lot for the way I looked when I was younger. And so I just wanted to like fit in. And this girl got all this attention. She was talking about how she drank, how she was drinking on the weekends and at the football games with her friends. And she was getting all this attention. So like something clicked in my head and I was like, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm going to do. And, you know, I can make friends like that because I was so shy and, you know, scared, really. And so I made a plan, homecoming football game, which is like, you know, the homecoming dance. It's like the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's like a big deal. It's a big football game. I went there. But right before, me and two friends decided we're going to drink. That was the first time I drank. I blacked out, got kicked out of school. What happened was I was walking around, like we walked from his house to across the street to the football field. A parent saw me walking around. I'm blacked out. I don't remember, obviously. And just, you know, you can tell, they could tell something's wrong with me. So the cops came to me. And then I remember my mom picking me up and I just screaming, and I didn't get arrested. Luckily, they let me go home. But I went back to school that Monday and they were like, you know, what happened? And, you know, we know a little bit. And I'm like, I told the truth. Because like me and my parents talked about it. We're like, I got to tell the truth. Like, that's the right thing to do.
Sure.
Well, the other two lied and said it was just me. But they were drunk. They just weren't like blacked out or like, you know, it didn't affect them like me, and they didn't get caught like me. So I got kicked out, went to a secondary school, which is like a bad kids school, for the rest of the year. And I learned how to do more bad kids stuff. You know, how to sneak out, all that stuff. I wasn't exposed to any of that stuff before. So this was like, you know, so I got in trouble the first time I drank.
Yeah. When you mentioned that you were in a different environment, which encouraged that behavior, do you believe that the adage that it's people and places and things, is that a big component of what happens?
I think so.
Yeah.
I really think so.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you're around the same people doing certain things and you're at the same places, all that, you know, you get in a bad environment, and it can be very hard to shake. I should also add too that it's not just that. Once those patterns start to develop, and you know, I know a lot of times people are critical of people who have gone on this journey, and the fact of the matter is, we've all experimented with alcohol. We've all done certain things, and for a lot of us, we get through it unscathed. And there are other times when the patterns in your brain start to change. And it's not a matter of, do I want to do this to have fun, to party anymore? You're actually engaging in the addiction not to be sick.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's not pleasant at that point. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the unpleasantness unfolded for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what led to me seeking help ultimately. Uh, it hadn't been a party for a while, and I got sober when I was 24. I'm 35 now, but I first got sober, entered recovery when I was 24 years old, and I was like a teenager mentally, uh, and I started out wanting to fit in. Like I said, the first time I drank, it was to fit in ultimately, uh, and and really just, you know, I wasn't comfortable in my skin,
Hmm.
and alcohol and drugs was like the answer. It was like my solution to that feeling. And I kept doing it. Became my solution for everything. And then it's every day and it's to become normal and to not be sick. And so, it started with alcohol, then it progressed to benzodiazepines like Xanax and all the other ones. And then pain pills with the opiate epidemic. And I got into all that, the stuff you see on TV with the painkillers and the doctors and all that. I lived that. And then the pill prices went up, and then it was heroin, and then it was fentanyl. And luckily that's when I stopped. But I always thought like I didn't get raised like this. I there was no alcohol in my house. Drug use was talked about from when I was young, that, you know, this isn't a good idea. And my father struggled with alcohol and other substances and had quit when I was 3, and he just stopped on his own. So, um, it was like it wasn't around. So it's like I knew better, quote unquote, but it didn't matter because once I found that solution, it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And here again, just so the audience knows, a lot of times, accountability in anybody's recovery is very important. There's absolutely no question about that. And the recovery community sometimes gets criticized for being too compassionate, and you need to be a strong parent in this. And there's a certain amount of truth to that.
Hmm.
There is accountability is important, but you have to understand that once these patterns in the brain start to change, um, your survival mechanisms start to go in place. And it's, where can I get my next fix? And it's not so much a conscious decision that you are making, but at that point, the addiction has taken hold. And, one of the things I would want to talk about is I don't know that there is such a thing as a, and we don't use this term, but a drug addict. That's what typically the pejorative term is used. And when you see these types of individuals portrayed in movies, or the stereotype is somebody with long hair, maybe like me, cruising around in his car, looking to commit a crime, and he's got a big gun and all that. And the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is if you really want to know what an addict looks like, take a look around your neighborhood. The person mowing the lawn, the dentist, the person who manages your favorite store. These are people that a lot of times, statistically, if you just take a large group of people, there's a certain amount of them that are fighting some sort of an addiction. I'm from Ohio, and I would presume most of our audience knows. I'm sure, Lindsay, that Ohio has been a hotbed for the opiate problem for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of good documentaries online if you want to check that out. But the path to addiction is not necessarily being a quote unquote bad guy like you see in the movies. It can start very innocently, being offered something at a party. And with the painkiller problem, was an issue with the overprescription. And the trauma and mental health often intersect, what we call co-occurring conditions. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, you obviously had some insecurity, and that went into the problem. You've been around people with, you talk about it a lot. How common and how should we be aware of what we call co-occurring conditions? And depression and all those things are reasons that people first try to self-medicate, and then they end up getting addicted, which compounds the problem.
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said. Oh, it is so common. And a lot of times the mental health and substance abuse go hand in hand. It starts a lot, I think, with self-medication. And I think that contributed to mine. I later was sent off to the old psychiatrist and therapist office,
Hmm.
um, because I'd said, Mom, like, there's something wrong with me. I can't stop, um, like, wanting to do this or do that. And I'm depressed and this and that. And I didn't know. And they diagnosed me as bipolar,
Mm.
but it mimics drug use and alcohol use, the
Okay.
disorder. So I was probably wrongly diagnosed with that at that age, especially because I was like 16. Because I didn't tell them I'm drinking and using drugs. It's like the same type of behavior. Now I have anxiety and I have PTSD and um, you know, like depression. I think,
Hmm.
what came first. I don't know if it's if I was solely self-medicating or if I started doing this because I had feelings of inadequacy growing up, and it made me feel like I like a natural human inkling to belong. And then it created that because I know alcohol and drugs do create the anxiety and further depression.
Yeah.
So it's like an endless cycle.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah. When I speak about accountability, I want to be clear too that oftentimes it's the addiction community that gets criticized for not having enough. But actually, if you go wider, it's very common with all kinds of different health issues. I've known a number of different people who had a heart attack and got the stent or whatever done or whatever procedure they needed, and then they went through the rehabilitation and the movement exercises and all those things, and all of a sudden they feel 10 years younger. And what do they start doing? They start eating beer and pizza and everything like they did when they were 10 years younger, which is exactly what got them there to begin with. And we really have to be conscious of how we're acting, how we're behaving, no matter what our issues are. And there isn't any one that's any better than another. So I always want to point that out when people criticize the recovery community, because everybody's a little guilty. And here again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a beer and a pizza once in a while, but when they become your diet, and you're taking in too much, you're on the road to, in the cases that I'm speaking of, going right back to what got you in trouble to begin with. Now, you talked a little bit about, you wanted to, when you started to realize you had a problem. That to me is a key moment, because being aware of the problem is the very first step. And one of the things that we always talk about in my circles is, once you reach that point, that's the time to get help before you change your mind. When you realize that something is out of whack, I'm going down the wrong road, that's the time to take action. Now is always the best time to get help. When did you realize I've got to take action? A lot of people that I've talked to have what they call a burning bush moment. Other people, they just managed to have the love and the support around them that they needed to get into that situation. How did that happen for you?
I think it was a process over time, but there are a few moments that stand out to me. One in particular, uh, well, I had went to prison for alcohol and drug related charges, um, things I would do under the influence. And so I did a year in Ocala State Prison up there. Came back and I felt great. I had gone a year without any substances in me, and I thought that this alone would be sufficient to keep me sober. I was 23 years old. My dad let me live back with him, and I remember I went like a couple weeks, and then I was right back to it because I thought that I could use pills recreationally again.
Yeah.
And I laugh about it because it's like, did you really think that? Yeah, I really did. Because in the beginning, that's how it started. My addiction, it comes on. I wasn't just all of a sudden addicted and had such a high tolerance overnight. It takes a little bit of time. Well, I can't go back to that. It's like once I crossed over this line with tolerance. It's
Yeah.
done. I can't go back to that. And I thought I could. And so my addiction was right back. And I was like, I got to do something. So I remember being in the garage and I'm like, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, I'm consumed with thoughts about when I'm going to get messed up, how I'm going to get messed up, where am I going to get the means to get said alcohol and drugs, and when I'm and then recovering from that, and I don't want to, like, it was, I had this moment of clarity that it was like, oh my God, like your whole life is consumed. Like you have to completely stop, or you need all the money in the world to just keep going. And so you can,
Mm-hmm.
it can be enough. But the reality is, like, you hear in the rooms, they say, one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. And no amount of drugs and alcohol would be enough to me
Mm-hmm.
to make me feel okay. It just, it doesn't work.
Right. So what was your
So I
first
realized
step?
that. I had insurance through my mom. I was under 26, and through like the Obama plan or whatever, I forget what, Affordable Care Act, more treatment could be covered by this insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a nice rehab over in North Palm Beach, 30,000 a month. My
Wow.
insurance covered it.
Wow.
And I said, Mom, Dad, I'm going. And my dad drove me there to Port St. Lucie to the detox. And then I went to West or North Palm, did like 30 days. And that was the beginning. Came back to where I live in Treasure Island, got hooked up with outpatient treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I slipped a little bit and fell, but I got, I didn't stop trying.
Yeah. And a lot of times, it is, don't get discouraged if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Just make sure you're going mostly forward. That's what we shoot for.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you have, you're a counselor, you work in the industry, and your content, let's talk a little bit about that. You share addiction and recovery tips. And here again, you can be found on the old Twitter X, whatever they're calling it now, at L_Valandry. What kind of, tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel and what methods do you use to inspire people in terms of their recovery journey?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So I actually began posting videos 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. And I was just inspired. And I just thought, I've been wanting to do this. I just need to do it. What am I waiting for? It doesn't, I don't need to like make a perfect video. Like that's not what my goal is. So I decided that my quote unquote mission, was going to be offering support, offering raw, real recovery, telling my story uncensored and making it available for free
Mm-hmm.
to anybody that wants it. Not everybody can afford to go to treatment. Everybody's on YouTube all the time. It's just how it is these days. And everybody needs a support network. And I think that's not emphasized enough in our community. And, being on Twitter and, we have the recovery posse. I don't even know how it developed. I just kind of found it. And it's like the hashtag recovery posse. And if you want to be in, you just post it and use the hashtag and you're in the club, you're in it. And that was really cool and appealing to me. And, that's kind of what led to the YouTube, because I'm like, I didn't realize that I was affecting others the way that I was. I didn't think it was possible to reach that many people. And so when I started doing that, it was just really cool. And so now I try to just think of stuff that I struggled with and do still struggle with now. And talk about it. And another thing too, I think that sometimes I think people think recovery has to be a certain way, or they think it's religious, or you have to be this perfect person. Um, you have to be this super great person.
Yeah.
And it's not true. I'm not like this super great person that um spends all my time helping people out of the goodness of my heart. It's just not true. I do these things because I have to stay sober. And I don't want to a lot of times. And that's just the
Hmm.
reality of it. But I have found through trial and error for the past 10 years working in treatment and stumbling in recovery, I relapsed a couple times and got back into it. And I learned a lot like
Yeah.
that, and then getting certified, that was a whole nother journey on its own. Work and recovery, that, just everything has led up to this point. And, I noticed there's not a lot of creators on YouTube for recovery. I mean, there are some,
Yeah.
obviously, but nothing that I really
Yeah.
identified with.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
crazy.
Well, that's being a positive voice. And I've talked to a lot of people. There are times, whether it be mental health or addiction, trauma, there are times when talking about it as an individual is very therapeutic. That seems to be the case in your situation. There's other times when it's not. And I wouldn't necessarily flat out encourage people to share their journey if they're not comfortable doing it. You have to take care of yourself to be helpful to anyone, as we often say. But for those who can and those who are willing and those that it helps, I think here again, getting back to those people, places, and things, when you're in that environment where people want to be sober, where people
Mm-hmm.
want to recover, that is so helpful. So if you're providing that, that is absolutely wonderful. Since you are in the industry and since you obviously share content and all these other things, one of the things I always ask about is stigma. And I'm sure you've gotten some negativity. How do you feel the stigma has it gotten better? I can tell you in Ohio it has, but that's largely because the problem has been so prevalent. Everybody's been touched by it. And you have a tendency to have more empathy for things when it hits home. How has stigma been for where you're at? And of course, your environment is Florida. Has the stigma gotten any better for people who are in the recovery, having a recovery journey?
I don't know that I can properly gauge it because I'm so in it and I have been. Um, I think so. Uh, I don't know though if that's just my perception
Sure.
or not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I do think though that I have noticed a transformation. Wanted to touch on something you said that
Sure.
keeps popping up in my mind when you said the accountability. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think there was more of like a harsher kind of outlook on people that were struggling. Yeah, that's stigma. But I mean, in the recovery community itself, I was this kind of person that was the source of a lot of that, I think. And
Hmm.
when I worked in treatment and it kind of went along with my journey of like that tough love and even with clients and being like, no, they need to hear this. And I remember another therapist that worked with me, he said, that's like being a probation officer. That's, and he was kind of making a joke out of it, but it stuck with me because I was like, F him, like, I'm trying to save people's lives.
Hmm.
But really it was kind of my ego. And then, now I notice that I'm able to help better when I'm not judgmental and when um, when someone comes to me and says, hey, I relapse and they're not scared to tell me, that's the
Hmm.
only way that we could move forward. Because
Absolutely.
if they're not able to feel comfortable enough to say they're struggling or that they picked up again and whatever, then there's no progress. Like, but for so long, I didn't realize that I was very much, I don't even know what the word would be, maybe like a stickler, and thought like my way was the only way. And
Mhm.
um, I guess it's just ego. And I think it's easy to get wrapped up in that, being in the bubble too,
Yeah.
but, but I think like if the more I talk about my struggles and the more I talk about like the things that happened to me as a result of my drug and alcohol use, I think that contributes to reducing the stigma. Um, Even if it be just a little bit, and in my immediate circle, I think it's necessary. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's,
Absolutely. Talking about it does reduce the stigma. There's absolutely no question when you realize more people have gone through it.
yeah.
And I would say this too about seeking treatment. I don't know what things are like specifically in Florida, but I know across the nation and here in Ohio in particular, getting access to help is well, we always need to do better, but it's much easier than it was before. There's a lot of nonprofits. There's a lot of local community agencies that will help with addiction and associated problems with recovery, including mental health. So it's a matter of doing a search in your local area to find out what's available. NAMI sometimes is an absolutely great resource. They can sometimes point you in the right direction if they can't help you directly. I would encourage help. There are people that can, and then I'm saying that this doesn't happen very often, but there are some people, I've known them, who have managed to turn their lives around individually, but the vast majority of people need help. And not only psychologically, but in some cases, in terms of alcohol, if you are chemically dependent on alcohol, trying to quit yourself can be very serious. As a matter of fact, it can be fatal. So I would very much encourage a medical supervision in terms of getting help. That would kind of be where I'd want to wrap this up. What would be your encouraging word? Whether it be, I don't want to come forward because I don't want anybody to know. I don't want my family to know. I don't want my employer to know. And those can be issues. I will say this. There's no guarantee that your employer is going to be sympathetic to your situation, but going back a few years now, if you are proactive, if you come to your employer and say, hey, look, I have a problem and I'm going to this place to get better. I'm going through treatment. I have it under control, but I'm just letting you know I do have a problem. Your situation in terms of outcome are much better than if you wait to fail a drug test or you get arrested. Now you're in a situation where coming clean isn't going to help you that much. So what would you say to people who, for whatever reason, are talking themselves out of reaching out for help? What would you tell them to say, hey, get help, reach out to somebody, a capable person, and have them steer you in the right direction, have them help you find a place that can help you?
Oh, that's long answer, but I'll try to keep it short.
Sure. Just,
Um, First of all, I just want to point out that, they have the FMLA and all that stuff now to where I believe it's illegal for an employer to fire you. I don't know if you know more about that, but I just know the basics of it. And so people that would come inpatient to our treatment centers would have that all filled out when they come in, and because it's a medical reason that they're
mhm.
seeking treatment. But I like what you said about, some employers, they're more understanding these days, I think.
Yeah.
Their chances are, somebody, or there's someone in your life directly affected by drug abuse or alcoholism. And that goes for everybody, I think. So chances are, your employer or someone, they have some kind of sympathy. They have some kind of instance to where they've been touched by addiction in some way. Um, so you'd be surprised. Another thing is discern, try to use your best discernment on who you reach out to. I don't mean that to be like to dissuade you from it, but I mean, there are people on the internet that try to sell a way of life. They try to, it's like gimmicky. I'm sure you've seen it. There's ways, reach out to a friend, reach out to someone you can trust, do some research, reach out to me, whatever. You can contact me on social media if you have any questions. I did admissions and insurance for years. So I know how that industry is, and it's a little scary at times. And I know it's hard to navigate because everybody says they have the best treatment center and this and that. Without saying too much, I work for a treatment center now that we're not inpatient. I go to the clients. It's like in-home addiction treatment. So it's cool that, I wish this was available for me when I got sober, but I don't know that it was a thing. It's fairly new. I'm understanding. And, if there's things like that now, it's not just our company. I've seen them pop up to where, if you have a kid, like I had a baby, and I don't know how I would have been able to go to treatment and go to inpatient. So I didn't when I had relapsed, but, so that's available. You can continue on with your life and have everything, these people come to you and it's really top notch. So there's that. Meetings are always available. There's online meetings now that I love. I really do. Smart recovery. There's everything. There's so many different resources. We just have to look for them. And like I said, that's kind of what I'm doing. What another goal of mine is to offer resources. I don't ever want to advocate or not advocate, but I'm not promoting a specific company. I don't ever promote my own workplace. I don't even share the name of that with anybody because this is solely for the benefit, of.
Oh, sure.
So that's kind of like another thing. So there's help. Just gotta look. Just gotta reach out and someone will be able to help.
Absolutely. And in this day and age, most people have access to at least a phone. You can do a quick search. If not, your local hospital, any type of place, just walk in and ask. And typically they have people that if that particular hospital can't offer it, they know there's people there that know the public resources that are available in that community. So, but by all means, do reach out to somebody. And you're right. So many times when there's a need, it becomes an industry. And that's a concern too. But here again, it's just a matter of doing a little research, talk to the right public officials and have them point you in the right direction and get the help you need. It is accessible. And I know the stigma can get in the way reaching out for help. Getting back to the job thing, it's not so much you're going to be punished at work for it, but they're afraid they're not going to respect me anymore. And that's not necessarily the case at all. Everybody anymore, like I said, here in Ohio, just about everybody knows somebody who's gone the journey. Let's talk a little bit where people can find you. I mentioned Twitter, which is now X. You're at Villandry, Villandry. Your YouTube channel is Recover Loudly. Where else can people find you? And is your show like weekly? Tell us a little bit about your content and how people can find you and access it.
Yeah, so just it's Recover Loudly with Lindsay, but the handle is Recover Loudly. So just type that in. I'm posting at least once daily, unless I don't feel good. But so the past 3 weeks I've been uploading usually 1, 2, 3, 4 videos a day. I do it in between my appointments with my clients for work. And so it's kind of just whenever I feel inspired or when someone asks me something and I feel compelled to make a video, I'm just trying to get out the message, especially now. So as often as I can, I'm posting on there. So reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about your journey, Lindsay. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Once again, I'm Billy Dees. You can find the Billy Dees podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. The same with social media. I'm on most. I would have to say Twitter or now X is kind of like my social media home, but any given platform, just search Billy Dees and it'll come right up. Lindsay, thank you again. And to our audience, thank you very much for listening to our podcast. And we will talk to you again next week.
Bye, guys.